What's up guys, DTwo from DTwoAOV.com here, back from the AWC. I took a little bit of a break, but now we are back with my Enchantments guide that I painstakingly put together for you guys. Now what this is basically me testing out every single one of the enchantments and seeing how they work, all the mechanics of them. Maybe there's some weird quirks, like just off the top of my head, for instance, Endless Cycle, it returns you to your base, not back to where you died, things like that, so that you don't have to. I also gave a little bit of strategy on how to use it, like what heroes can use them best, you know, how to basically make the best use out of that particular enchantment, or perhaps, you know, giving you some direction as to whether you should build that enchantment on your hero or not. And then finally I gave a rating, actually 2 ratings per enchantment. I'll talk about that in a moment, but because people like hard numbers and they don't like talking about vague nuances of my explanation, gave them numbers so they can really disagree with what I mean. Speaking of disagreement, obviously this is really early as of recording this. This is like 2 to 3 weeks, about 3 weeks after the AOV 3.0 came out. So I'm going to be wrong on some of these, especially as people realized certain things about certain enchantments. And so if you disagree, feel very free to let me know in the comments. Don't dislike the video though. Thumbs up the video and then say why you disagreed in the comments, because I am actively letting you disagree with me in the comments and telling. In fact, I've already had someone disagree with me on Reddit, and then I actually changed one of my ratings already because I'm like, yeah, you know what, you're right, you are right. So let's get to it. Starting off with just the rules. Some people might not know the rules. You never know. Obviously, you get the main mastery and the 2 side masteries. Those are the 2 like branches, whatever. Your side masteries cannot be the same color as your main mastery, but they themselves may be the same color. But if they are the same color, then you have to choose one level 1, one level 2, right? You can't choose 2 level 1s of the same color enchantment. Like if your main mastery, for instance, is Evita, the yellow, and your side enchantments is Lockheim, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Lockheim, then you can't have 2 Lockheim level 1s. You have to have 1 level 1, one level 2. But if they're a different color, then they both have to be level 1. You can't like skip straight to level 2. So that makes it interesting as far as what enchantments are competing with what other enchantments. Obviously, things that are the same color and level are competing with each other because you can't pick those 2. But there's interesting situations, like, for instance, with someone who, like a damage dealer, right? Whether they pick Lockheim or Vita, it's going to be harder for them to pick like a green, for instance, the Evita, because if they pick one Evita, then that means they can't pick a level 2 of either the yellow or the red. So it makes it a bit interesting there. So I gave each one a rating, and basically I gave one a specific rating. So for specific heroes, how good is it? Like if they meet all the criteria of like using that, if it just fits their hero perfectly, then, you know, I gave them a rating for that. And then overall, like if some random hero just uses it. And the reason why I split it up this way is because I wanted to make it clear to people seeing, like, for instance, I think I gave like I think either, what was it, the not Curse of Death, but Devil's Awakening, and what was the other one? I think I gave Devil's Awakening, Desperate Duel, both like 5 out of 5 in the specific category, but you can't just pick those because it's not gonna always be good in everyone. So like overall, if it's like a lower overall number, then you shouldn't pick it with any old hero. But sometimes I actually have a higher overall number than the specific number, and that in those situations it's like it's so good just in general that if you feel like whatever you're using in your own specific category is not very good, then you can just pick that one, even though it might not be great for you specifically. Like for instance, in Evita, I don't think there's like all that great green ones, but if you're like a support, you can actually decide to go yellow for your main mastery, go Vita for your main mastery, just to get, for instance, Sacred Protection, which I think is one of the best. And that is like almost worth going that mastery just to have that, if you don't want to go into the green. So things like that. Pay attention to both specific and overall, and I try to give a good like explanation of who fits each specific or who fits into what I deem like specifically good for that enchantment. But I didn't want to be too specific. I didn't want to like explain too much detail or like, you know, basically list every single hero. First of all, because that's way too much work, but also because I can easily be wrong, to be frank. And you know, there could be situations where I say, well, this hero should be this, and well, in fact, maybe it was better to put them in a different category, or maybe they're good for two different things. For instance, like off the top of my head, I would think like, for instance, Kilgroth would be good in Desperate Duel. But there was a Reddit post the other day with someone using Kilgroth with Devil's Awakening, and it was like, oh yeah, he's not just an auto attacker, he also has really long cooldowns on his first two abilities, and Devil's Awakening helps that a lot. So like if you think of Kilgroth, he's kind of like he does auto attack a lot, but he also kind of has a similar way of engaging as Rourke and like Xanis, where he goes in with a dash, and if you you know, screw up, then you're basically dead. You can't, I mean, you can kind of try to audio attack your way out of it, but there's nothing, no whole I can do. And for instance, if they run away even further, then you're kind of like left out to dry. And that's very similar to Rourke and Dennis in that regard. And yeah, basically I didn't want to be too specific in talking about that, because obviously people are going to continue to experiment and continue to figure things out about each enchantment. So, other stuff, whoever wrote the descriptions, I'm sorry, they did a really poor job. There's problems with like plural and singular. Sometimes it's very like ambiguous what they meant. A lot of times they left out what kind of damage dealt. Like for instance, there were 2 or 3 enchantments that said they did, you know, X amount of damage. It's like, what kind of damage? And it ends up being that most of it, actually all of it, was magic damage, with the obvious exception of backstabbing. So that was really frustrating. So if you read my guide here, unless there's something that I really feel like I need to specify in the mechanics, I will have changed the description to make it more easy to understand. So if you're confused about how something works, then just go to my description or read the mechanics, and you'll probably be able to figure it out. Speaking of which, if someone doesn't know something about an enchantment, then all you have to do is type in the URL of this article and just put pound and the enchantment name without punctuation and with the capitalization intact. So just do that, send it to them, say this is how it works, you dummy. It's not how that, what you think is how it works is not how it works. Anyway, let's get onto it, starting off with Evita. Now, Evita just in general, it's kind of underwhelming. I think that Evita and Lockheim, the yellow and red, are the most impactful. And so, yeah, we'll get into it. So, Tower Blessing, this is really interesting. So, the reason why I have this massive paragraph is because sometimes I change my thoughts like as I'm going through like kind of rating them or thinking about how they work. So, my first thought is, this is not good. And the reason why is because this range is really small. If you're a support trying to dive a tower, especially, and you think of like early game, like, okay, you could be cheeky and take a tower, and you're the support, you're gonna gang up in the Abyssal lane, you're gonna have a 2-for-1, you're gonna jump them, and it's like, well, most of the damage is coming from the opposing hero, or the tower anyway, not the opposing hero. If the opposing hero's there, they're either like a marksman just running away, or they're like an assassin or some melee hero who's going to try to jump the lesser hero or the less beefy hero. That's not you, right? They're gonna run past you and try to kill the smaller hero, right? If they really are focused on saving the tower, because if they just try to focus on killing you, then maybe the tower dies and you die. Like, it's basically a good thing for the team that's charging the tower. They're not really trying to kill you. Also, you having resistance is like not really a big deal, because you're you're support, right? So you're mostly just to be a big beefcake and stand in the front anyway. So having resistance, like, whatever, it doesn't matter if you're stunned, just stand there. Obviously it might help if you're trying to catch someone like a Baldum, you get stunned out of like your wild charge or something like that, but it's not that important. But the more I thought about it, it's like, okay, well, the way you use this is a very important mid to late game enchantment. And the reason for that is because you start getting into situations where it's hard to take down the last towers, and having this extra resistance is really, really nice. And just jumping in there, and by the time you have that much, by the time you're kind of got a few items built up, the extra resistance on top, or excuse me, extra damage reduction on top of the amount of armor and magic defense that you have is going to be like it's going to add up to like thousands of extra damage that's being poured into because of this extra 10%. So that's actually a big deal. The problem with Tower Blessing is that it's a late game thing, and it's like picking Disrupt, right? It's like picking Disrupt, and it's just not very good, especially because like you can't really rely, because it's not very good in the early game when you're trying to force on towers. Especially, I suppose when you get to the mid game and you're really just trying to bust down towers, it could be good in that regard, right? If you're just trying to force them down, it can be okay, especially the mid tower, which can be hard to kill. But other than that, it's kind of hoping that you get ahead, and if you get behind, this is obviously completely worthless. So I gave it a 2 out of 5 overall. In fact, I might have maybe should have gone 2 out of 5 specific. But anyway, that's my winding thought process, right? It's like not as good as you would imagine. It's good in the mid to late game, but you have to get there. And you have to be really coordinated with the team, saying like, I have Tower Blessing, we need to dive, right? And make it obvious. So not the greatest in solo queue. By the way, I promise I'm not going to go really long like I just did with all of them. This is not, I'm not going to have like a long thing for every single one of these. It's just that like, a lot of the Evita just confuse me. I'm like, I don't really know what to think about this, because it's like, although maybe it's a waste of time, kind of trying to convince you guys whether it's like okay or bad, because you're not going to pick it anyway. Anyway, next one's Backstabbing. Backstabbing is not great. I know I gave it a 4 or 5 overall, but that's the only reason I did that is because it's basically good on everyone. Like everyone can use this, right? Everyone can hide in the bush and do some damage. The thing is, it doesn't really do all that much damage. This is 132 to 200, and this is based on early game HP totals. This is a squishy, this is a tanky here, and then late game is like this much. And late game, this is like nothing. You're not killing anyone with this amount of damage. In the early game, like this much true damage is like, sure, fine, but you can only really use it as a support, because if you are a damage dealer, you're going to want something else in Lockheim or Evita, which is going to do a lot more damage than this on average, right? Like the initial burst damage is going to be more from this, but the cooldown is 20 seconds, and you have to be in the bush. It's like usually going to be in lane or early game, right? Not going to be in the bush. Maybe like a jungle be in the bush, but again, jungle has a lot more important things to be picking than this. So it's basically for support, and you do like a tiny bit of damage. Again, yes, if you compare it to other things, this is like compared to like Holy Verdict, whatever. Sorry, not Holy Verdict, but basically, like, I don't know, Raging Inferno. Like, yes, it does more damage, but Raging Inferno's up more often. You don't have to like be in the bush. Like on average, you're going to be doing more damage with Raging Inferno, and you get to build into other colors as well. So it seems good. It's not that good, but anyone can use it, which is again why I gave it 4 out of 5 overall. River Trigger would probably be my favorite if you're going to be support and you're going to be picking this, just because like having that extra movement speed is really nice. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you're confused about like how percentages and stuff like that works, I linked my item guide like a billion times in this, but basically go to my item guide. This is my perpetually incomplete item guide. I've only gone through 2 categories so far, attack and magic. But the first part of the item guide is worth reading just by itself, because of the fact that I explain all these things, like how percentages work, how life still works, how like all the stat counts and stuff like that. So even though it's incomplete, you should really go check my item guide if you're confused about things like that. And yeah, I linked to it a bunch of times here. The reason why I mentioned that is because for River Treader, this is very unusual that you actually get base movement speed. Usually it's a percentage. The only thing that actually helps base movement speed is boots, and that's it. And like 1 ability on Amelie, that's it. So that's actually really cool, because by getting this 10 extra movement speed, it helps all percentage movement speed boosts after that. Like if you get like Frosty's Revenge or something like that, or if you get I think it's Gaia Standard that gives you extra movement speed. So that acts upon this and actually boosts it even more. If possible, you always want to gain like base movement speed, because that gets like multiplied later on, which is why they don't really give base movement speed to many, or to anything at all really, other than boots. Which is also why what's it called? Hermes Select is ridiculous, because it actually doubles the base movement speed, not the percentage. Anyway, so you got extra movement speed. you get this. This was so confusing in the thing. It said like, get 20 HP and 10 mana every 5 seconds, as if it was like a one-time thing. I forgot exactly what it said, but it was very, very confusing. But the point is, all it does is just add on to your existing HP and mana regen. So even though it's a very, very slight boost, because if you're a roaming support, you're going to consistently be like rotating in between lanes. You can just hide in one of the bushes in the river if you're just waiting. And a lot of times you're going to be like half health, but you can't really go back because there's going to be a fight soon, and your team needs you, like around the abyssal. Like your team basically is like like living in the dark, basically, if you're not on the map, and you constantly need to be on the map if you're a roaming support. So a River Trader really helps you stay on the map, and also helps you have your ganks. It could potentially be good for a DS laner who rotates over to the mid, and perhaps even the abyssal lane, or the abyssal dragon, I should say. Something like Scud, for instance, just takes out the lane really quick and comes over, uses River Trader, gets over, gets one gank. Again, probably the DS laner wants to go for red or yellow, but you know, you get one good gank with River Trader and it's all worth it. Excuse me. All right, Nature's Gift. This is so weird. If you're in a bush, you don't get stacks. Just letting you know, you don't get stacks. It's very weird. Obviously, if you get 800 HP, it's very, very nice. If you get a maximum 100 stacks, it's harder than you think to get stacks. And by the time you get the stacks, it's like the end of the game. So like when the game is mostly being decided, which is, you know, early and mid game, you don't have the stacks, so it's like not amazing. You only have like maybe like 100 HP at most in the early game. So this is not great. The only reason why this is, the only reason why I'm having a hard time with words. When I was casting, it was much easier to have words because I had practice. Now my words are very bad. Even though it's not great, you'd still want to pick this because Regrowth is so bad. And let's talk about Regrowth. So, Regrowth, like I mentioned here, 10% isn't a lot, right? It sounds like a lot. I'm just going to read verbatim, because percentages in Arena Valor are usually based on things that matter, like max HP or damage itself. When you see like 10%, you're like, oh my god, that's like 10% extra damage, or 10%, you know, more HP, like all these kinds of things. It sounds great. This is 10% on the healing effects, and the healing effects themselves are like balanced. You know, they're balanced for a reason. So adding a tiny bit onto what originally is a tiny bit anyway is not very helpful. For instance, if you have Gaia Standard, getting this makes you heal 0.8% more. It's barely anything. Like literally, it's 100 health restored when you have 12,000 HP. You literally cannot see it, even if you like somehow like I took a screenshot and like zoomed in like all the way. Even when you're lower than 50% health and it's doubled, it's still 200 out of 12,000. It's really not much at all. So it's not worth. Really, the only reason you'd get this is if you're constantly healing, like if you're Arm or Pura, perhaps a support Sephira, something like that. Someone who doesn't really need. I mean, everyone can use HP, but like for someone who this would be more useful. So yeah, most people will take Nature's Gift or Regrowth if you're building a Fada. Let's go to level 3. Forest Wanderer. Forest Wanderer is for range supports, because both Explosive Shield and Nature's Rage are very geared toward melee supports. And yeah, it's like okay. It's not great. If you're like an Alice, it's decent because you can't reliably land your Sunshine. So just going over, getting one auto attack off, and being able to land your Sunshine afterward because they're slowed is nice. The nice thing about Forest Wanderer is that range supports have a difficult time saving their backline, and this can help you, but it makes it really hard to use because you have to specifically aim for the right person and get the damage reduction on that specific enemy. right? So say like assassins diving your back line, you have to save your auto attack, which means you really need to turn on avatars if you're going to be using Force One, or else like what are you doing, right? You need to turn on avatars. You need to specifically auto attack like that person, right? Because there might be people in the vicinity. You don't know if they're like the lowest HP or percentage HP, whatever. You need to specifically target the person. In that case, it can be really nice. You can save your backline by using this at the right moment. The issue is that it only lasts 2 seconds. And you can only use this once per fight because, again, the cooldown, quote-unquote, is, that you have to exit combat. So you can only use it once per fight. You really have to wait, like, basically like Joker, for instance. Someone else who really doesn't really fight until he can get his passive off, and kind of runs around like a chicken with his head cut off, waiting to use his passive. That's basically what you're doing here. You're not attacking. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be doing damage as a ranged support. So you'll be waiting and waiting to use your auto. But just make sure you use it wisely is what I'm trying to say. But that is my advice, though. If you're playing as a ranged support, that is the best way to use it. Obviously, you can use it for ganks. It says gank right here in the thing, but I would say that the best way to use it is to get people, or to significantly reduce the damage coming to your backline by landing it on one of the assassins, and that will help you quite a bit. 1 out of 5 overall. It's really bad if you just if you use this as a melee support. I mean, I guess you can use it to get someone off your backline, but the gank potential is just so poor if you're a melee here trying to use this, and you barely even notice it. Okay, next one is Explosive Shield. I really hate this, and it's just, it seems so cool, right? It's like, wow, you explodes in the 3.5 meter radius, which is actually like decently large. And they take 10% of their max HP damage, and they're stunned, and you get a bonus healing. Then when you start testing it, when you start actually using it, all of this falls apart, because 20 freaking stacks is so much. You don't survive 20 attacks. You don't survive 20 instances of damage. You're going to die. So like, people are going to be attacking the entire time. You're running for your life. By the time this actually goes off, you're not even near them because they're attacking you the entire time. And you're just trying to survive. And meanwhile, like, while you're running away, you use whatever healing effects you have because you're trying not to die. So whatever, healing, it's so hard to actually get these healing effects off properly. After the 20 stacks go off, like, obviously Gaia Standard is not going to go off unless you've been like in the fight for, what is it, like 18 seconds, whatever that cooldown is. And yeah, and then the stun is nothing. The stun is literally as long as one of Ignis's Rain of Fires, and he has like chain stuns like that. It's nothing. Every single one of like a normal support stun is longer than this. So yeah, you're sitting there like, please, I want to get this out. Like, in the example before, even if you're running away and you decide to like re-engage, like, ha, I gotcha, and you turn around and you turn on them, you re-engage. It's like, yeah, it's just a 0.75 second stun, and most people have resistance or what have you to let them get out of that anyway. So it's nothing. If you watch like pro games, I've been watching pro games and seeing if I was wrong about Explosive Shield, because some people occasionally use it in the AOG lately. And I'm watching, and it does nothing. It's like they get stunned, they get popped up for like a tiny bit, and then they just proceed to kill the person. It doesn't do much. And then 10% of their max HP, like 10%. I mean, I guess it could be like good in the early game, but in the late game, all the tankier heroes are gonna have magic defense. And the squishy heroes, if you somehow magically are able to get on them with Explosive Shield about to go off, then they're just happy that they're not taking they're not getting chunked to like half their health, which is usually standard if you're a squishy, right? If you're a squishy hero, you don't take any damage. You're not supposed to take any damage at all. And maybe perhaps you die because of this, but no one's going to be you're not going to ever catch someone out with Explosive Shield, right? Because once the ring starts pulsating around you, everyone's going to run away. And that, in my opinion, is actually the best part about Explosive Shield, because the pulsating rings, when it starts going off, is like actually scary, and they might be like, oh god, it's going to go off soon, not realizing that's not really that big of a deal. And they might run away from you. That's as good as an endorsement I can give for Explosive Shield, is that it's kind of scary with the pulsating green rings. Okay. Anyway, let me know if you disagree. It's just, if this is ever going to see the light of day, they need to reduce the stacks by a lot. Because the effect seems like amazing, but it's not. Right? Either they make the effect crazy, but I don't think they should, because that would be ridiculous. I think they should just lower the stacks, and then this is good enough. Okay, moving on. I swear in the future I'm going to be talking less about this stuff. Just Evita for some reason. Evita, man. Anyway, Nature's Rage. So, this is probably the best Evita. It's not great, but it's probably the best one. But the thing is, you need coordination. Because if you're able to stun someone, and particularly if, I mean, you have to basically be a melee hero to use this. I mean, obviously you can stun someone with, wind cuffs or sunshine or whatever. But the burn effect is what's important. And the burn effect doesn't do that much damage, but it does bring down, it does, have magic defense break, basically, if you use the terminology from, what's it called? From Spear Longinus. It makes them lose magic defense to the tune of 72. In the late game after level 15, but you need to be burning them. The CC effect itself does not reduce the magic defense, right? You can't just CC someone and be like, oh, now they have less magic defense, so mage, go kill them. You have to actually be burning them, which is why this is definitely a melee focus item. I mean, that's the whole point, right? The whole point is you stun them and now you have a burn effect. If you do it with Alice, like, who cares? You're gonna run in there with Alice? Not really. And not to mention the fact that if you stun them with your body, like with the Thane or Baldum or what have you, you're stunning them and basically forcing them to be near you so you can burn them. So yeah, this requires coordination to make sure that you get your mage and whoever has magic damage in the vicinity to deal damage. Otherwise, though, it's like not that big of a deal. You're doing a maximum 10% magic damage, like I mentioned earlier. That's not really that big of a deal, and that's maximum. And by the way, the range is 2 meters, which is melee range. So basically, if you're capable of attacking them, then you're burning them. Otherwise, you're not burning them. The animation range looks almost like twice as large. Don't be fooled by the animation range. It looks really big. It's not that big. The actual range is like way smaller, and you'll be able to tell if you're burning them because there's going to be very, very small purple numbers popping up. Okay. Oh my god. Okay. Through that, I should actually say the ratings, huh? 3 out of 5 specific for Tower Blessing, 2 out of 5 overall. I mentioned earlier, I should probably drop that. Backstabbing, 3 out of 5, 4 to 5 overall, because everyone can use it. 4 to 5 specific, 4 to 5 overall for River Treader. It's pretty decent. Everyone can use it. The biggest problem with River Treader is that no one wants either of these. Like, everyone can use River Treader as level 1, but no one wants to use one of these at level 2. So you're basically giving up a level 2 yellow or red in order to get this, because that's what it's competing with. That's the biggest problem. Nature's Gift, I gave 3 out of 5 specific, 4 to 5 overall. Like, everyone can use like the stacks from this, but it's not that great. Regrowth, the same thing. Like, everyone can use a little bit of extra healing, no matter who they are. But 1 out of 5, or sorry, that's the opposite. 3 out of 5 specific. It's like decent on Pura, and it's terrible overall. Forest Wonder, obviously terrible overall. 3 out of 5 specific. Explosive Shield, I give it a terrible grade, both specific and overall. And Nature's Rage, if you have good coordination, it's 4. Otherwise, it's just a 3. It's just kind of like not great. And 0 out of 5 for some because they don't have stuns. If you literally don't have stuns, then you cannot use this. Okay, moving on to Evita, Sacred Bead. This one's as obvious as it gets. If you put a lot of stock in your ult, then you're gonna want this. Actually, the more I think about it, this is really good for some heroes. I mean, I guess part of the reason why I only gave it a 3 to 5 specific is because it's not that much. Like, even on Illumia, right? She has 60 seconds, or is 70 seconds on Cataclysm early. So even if you take 10% off that, it's only 7 seconds off, which is like, are you really going to use your ult in those exact 7 seconds? Maybe, maybe not. Same thing with the Ignis. Like, if you use your ult, I forgot. I mean, I'm guessing he has like a maybe 30-second ult that goes on to like 18 or something like that. But even that's only like 3 seconds less. So like 10% is nice. But I guess the biggest thing is that you don't, like, if you get early CDR, then it's even better. I was thinking just now that maybe I should move this to a 4 because it's really good in certain heroes, but yeah, maybe I should. I don't know. Anyway, I gave it 3 out of 5, specific and overall. Mana refill. Recover 8%. This is very, what's it called? Like, deceitful. I can't think of words right now, but that's the best I can come up with. It's because it's based on lost mana. You can't just like stay topped off. You have to basically, if you get the most bang for your buck out of this when you're low. And for instance, if you like completely run out of mana, then sometimes getting the 8% is not enough to use some of your abilities. Like for instance, I think it was like a Kali. Like I was just like testing it out in training with Kali, and I couldn't use my my pool. I forgot her first ability. I couldn't use her pool coming from 0 mana and attacking because 8% wasn't enough to use it. So be careful. It's not like if you really need mana, like really badly, like if you're like a lane Valor or something, or I was thinking like Sephra. The reason why I didn't want to mention Sephra in this strategy section is because she probably wants to go Sacred Bead, so I didn't want to make it seem like, you know, you'd pick this for Sephra. But yeah, the biggest problem with mana refill is that it's just not as good as the other ones. Maybe I should put 2 as specific actually, because it's just not as good as the other ones. I'm thinking of changing some of these ratings. Tell me which ones are bad, by the way. Because I keep looking at this, I'm like, it makes it seem like Evita's just as good as the other ones when they're really not. I should lower some of the Evita ones. Anyway, let's just move on. Let's just move on. Let me know which ones I should change. I should probably like wholesale is like move all the or change all the Evitas to or -1. Anyway, mana refill, it's like not that great. Yeah, you can see on the map, but it involves hitting the opposing hero, and if you're hitting the opposing hero, you're probably killing them anyway. It's kind of like a win more, in a way. Acts of Sacrifice. So, Acts of Sacrifice, it's one of those things, again, where it seems like it's a big deal, right? You're like, oh, I did percentage more damage. But it's not really. If you do the math, 3% is tiny. For instance, if you, like, you're Violet, right? You use Tactical Fire, you do 1,000 damage. You're only adding 30. It's like nothing. It's absolutely nothing. There's not going to be the difference at all. And on the back end, the damage that you take, like say if you have 5,000 health, which is a squishy in the late game essentially, and you end up dying, like this will have caused you to take 100 more damage, and it's like it's not really a big deal. But I still get a high specific score, and the reason why is because this is very good for junglers. Very, very good for junglers, because obviously you're constantly capable of attacking, and you need to clear as quickly as possible. In the first wave for junglers, it does 690 damage, which is a lot of seconds saved. Obviously, it might be a little bit less just because you're going to be overkilling sometimes, but it's still like very, very significant. You're going to be, I mean, if you have to stay there for like an extra auto attack on every single one, or save an auto attack on every single one, I should say, then you're going to be saving a lot of time. So it's very, very good for junglers. Moving on. Like, for instance, if you're Violet and you're jungling, you don't want Sacred Bead because who cares about her ult? And mana refill, obviously you're jungling, you don't need it. So Acts of Sacrifice would be amazing for her. Okay, moving on. Holy Verdict. I think Holy Verdict is the standard, I would say. It's the standard for all damage healers. If you are, if you can afford it. If you can afford to get a level 2 Evita. 60 armor magic pierce is a lot. The only issue with this is if you're planning on getting like Merm Asar or Safandul, then this gets hurt a lot. Like for instance, if you get Merm Asar, then this is 25. Or excuse me, it's only 55% of what that is. What's 60 times 0.55? Hold on, just do some quick math. Times 60 times 0.55. Oops. It's 33. So basically, it's only 33. If you have Mermasa, so be careful about that. So, yeah, if you're going, it's like, it's still generally good though, because at the beginning of the game, having that extra 18 or so armor magic pierce is going to do, it's going to be providing you the most damage, like by far, out of all of the like stat boosters. You know, between this, between blessing, between what's it called, Deadly Claw, which is the level 2 Lockheim. This is going to be doing the most damage, unless there's a specific reason not to. And I will go over those specific reasons not to as we get to the other ones. Alright, let's go to Blessing here. So, Blessing adds 12% crit chance from equipment, 8% ability power from equipment, couple of dispellings here is that you gotta be careful with when it says percentage, right? Because it doesn't add 12% crit chance. Usually, when you talk about percentages, it's added on. Like if I have Slick Sting, it's 25%. If I have Clavis Sancte, it's 25%. If I buy both, it's 50%, right? They're not multiplied by each other. In this case, though, it is multiplied. So if you have Blessing and you buy Gloves, which is 12% crit, then the Blessing will give you an extra 1.44% crit. And that's not really that big of a deal. It helps if you're like a Wukong. It helps if you're, you know, for instance, if you're just sad that Bua Slaughter got nerfed, and you want to have, you know, 50% crit rather than the 45% that it got nerfed to, then this is for you. You know, one extra crit could make the difference, obviously, in the game. Just be careful about what it is. Also, equipment means items only. I tested this. You don't get any extra from Arcana, so be careful about that. Again, like I mentioned earlier, unless there's a specific reason not to, I would say getting this Pierce is much better than getting this extra 8% ability power from equipment, because even if you have like a massive amount of ability power, I think I calculated, says like if you have 15,000 ability power, which you can get if you just go like, you know, damage, and then Hecate's. If you get to 15,000, this is like 120, and 120 is like not gonna move the needle that much if you already have 15,000. So, you know, it's not gonna, you know, do that all that much more than, or not gonna really compare with Holy Verdict. The big thing is that if you're someone who scales with AP a lot, like Darcy, or if you're like L'Oreal, who really relies on true damage, and you want the scaling on her passive, for instance, then that's what you would go for. I totally forgot to talk about my ratings again. This is gonna be a long and rambling video, guys, and there's gonna be no editing on this because I'm very lazy. Anyway, Holy Verdict. Gets 4 to 5 specific, 3 to 5 overall, because most people can use it. Blessing is 3 out of 5 specific, 2 out of 5 overall, 0 out of 5 for some, because if you're not a mage and you don't use critical chance, just literally does nothing. Okay, next one. Drink water. Okay. So, Sacred Protection. This is like the go-to / fallback option for like literally every single hero in the game, no matter what role you are. Everyone can pick this. Obviously, if you're going for Sacred Protection as like a support or something like that, then obviously you're not going to have much choice here at level 2, but it might be worth it. But this is extremely good. And the reason why is because not only do you get a pretty sizable shield, it's about 17% of max HP at level 1 and 23% at level 15 for squishies. It's about 11% for tanks throughout the game. Obviously, it goes from 550 to 1390. So it's a pretty decent shield. Excuse me. But on top of that, you get 50% movement speed. That is nuts. I mean, it's only 1.5 seconds, but that's a really, really big deal. What it allows you to do is someone jumps you, you get a shield, and maybe they use their whole combo, right? You can actually chase after them and get them back. Or they jump you, you can run away. Or you're an assassin, you jump in, you kill someone, now their team's mad, they're after you, and you've blown on their cooldowns. They chunk you for 30%, and you run away really fast because you have 1.5 seconds of 50% increased movement speed. Really, really, really good. As far as this magic lifesteal nonsense, it's not very clear, and I tried to make it. It's very hard to test this, guys. It's very hard because if you go to trading and you kill the AI, how do you have to be basically like right next to a monster or something, And then, like, but then it's much easier to take 30% damage in 3 seconds if you're next to a tower, but it's very hard to be next to a tower and next to a monster. And even if there was a place to do that, which is around the second tower, I believe, then it would still be very hard to, like, push around the opposing AI guy, especially because usually when you're testing this, you're testing this as a mage, because that's the best way to test it, because otherwise how could you tell that your magic lifesteal is moving at all? And mages don't really have knockbacks. I mean, not many heroes have knockbacks in the first place. It's usually only supports. It's really hard to test this, guys. And I took like a Hawk video, HQ Hawk, and I slowed it down and I went frame by frame and I tried to figure out. And there was like a perfect situation too. Like he killed someone and clearly he killed he attack someone else within 1.5 seconds, and it didn't seem to move the needle at all. I think his 50% lifesteal isn't all that much. I mean, it's like okay, but it's not gonna like kill you to full or anything unless you do like a crazy combo, and usually use your crazy combo on the first person. Anyway, the point is, I don't know what the heck is going on. I don't know how long you have to kill someone to get the the extra magic lifesteal. I don't know. It's because I don't know if it's like I'm guessing it's 1.5 seconds. But anyway. I'm just thinking about like my testing and like how could possibly test it, but it's very, very hard. Honestly, and this was the one I actually rated. I rated 4 to 5 and then 4 to 5, and part of that was because I was like, this magic lifesteal thing does not seem. It's like the freaking Bigfoot. It's like the Loch Ness monster. Like doesn't exist. I don't know if you guys can somehow find a way to test it. Then let me know. And I was so frustrated that I gave it 4 or 5 overall. But it's definitely a 5 out of 5 overall. It could be argued that's a 5 out of 5 specific as well because it's extremely good for what it does. Yeah, and if you go watch the AOG, then you have teams picking it out of for like 4 to 5 of their heroes, and it's pretty nuts. Okay, moving on. Holy Thunder. So Holy Thunder, I thought was like really good. The problem is it doesn't do like a crazy amount of damage. Even if you go full damage, it's 440 and 680 for those heroes. It's about like 150 less for both of these if you're building a hybrid build. If you're wondering if you should do that. And the answer is usually no, because usually if you're melee and you're building hybrid, you're probably better off going for something in the log-com category. So, yeah, it's good. Sorry, I'm like losing my train of thought here because I'm just like rambling on about the other things. Again, no edits because I'm lazy. So Holy Thunder is good for long-range heroes. For someone like Elsu, it does a ton of damage. Elsu and Kali in particular, it's pretty good. And the reason for that is because in the early game, you can auto-attack people and it does a lot of damage. And then in the late game, you just snipe / ethereal pulse them to death. And it does a lot of damage. And you can just add damage from like from a bajillion miles away. So 4 to 5 specific, 3 to 5 overall. Next, Holy Summoner. Holy Summoner, if you think about it, it's only an early game. It's only an early game enchantment. And the reason why is because it doesn't scale very well. It doesn't scale very well at all. Obviously, it does 40% of your AD, but there's no crit. The armor pierce doesn't go up. The only way you can actually help this with the armor pierce is to pick Spear Longinus. And if you pick Spear Longinus, it's like negative synergy because this is percent armor pierce. And Spear Longinus is obviously the raw armor pierce first because you're reducing it from your opponent. So again, it's not really helping all that much. So yeah, early game you might be able to, this might help you kill someone. Late game, if you think about it, if you're attacking another squishy, like say you're in like a squishy versus squishy battle, right? 3 attacks, they're already dead. They're already dead. There's no reason to have this after that. And if you're against a tank, then this thing is going to do 0 damage because it has no crit and no like real armor pierce. This would be decent on warriors, except there's way better things on Lochheim. So it's not very good. Again, I give it 3 to 5 specific, 3 to 5 overall, but it's just not good, guys. Don't pick it. Lochheim. Finally Lochheim. I need another drink of water. Okay, so Raging Inferno is kind of a go-to. It's just very safe. You're gonna do extra damage. It's just straight up like you will do extra damage with this. Every 8 seconds, do extra damage basically. So I gave like specific like who this is good for, just because like that it helps them the most. Like for instance, if you're like a brawler and you're like auto attacking constantly, this is not gonna help you all that much. I mean, yeah, maybe you can get too often because it's only 8-second cooldown, but you really want to be either bursting someone down with a melee hero, or and like I mentioned, 0 to 1 dashes in their kit because of Shadowblade, or long edge poke heroes. You do your extra damage with this. So I gave it a 4 to 5 specific, 3 to 5 overall. It just does damage. It's nice. Shadowblade. This is very specific. Because you can't just pick this because you have a dash, right? You can't just be like, well, I have a dash, so therefore I'm going to use it. Like, I don't know who's a good one. Like, Scud. You can't just be like, I'll use Shadowblade and get extra damage, and then I'm gonna, I'll even use my ult and then refresh my first ability, and then I'll get another set of damage. And it's like, no, you're not. I mean, and even then, like you'd have to dash ult. You'd have to like dash auto ult, dash auto. I guess you could just auto at the end, huh? So you go dash ult dash auto or something like that. I guess you'd want to get your power glove off earlier than that, just because you're probably running out of time. Anyway, the point is that even for him, you're only getting an extra like 200 damage even at level 15, which is going to be less than Raging Inferno. So the point is that for Shadowblade, you want to, I mean, go test it yourself. I don't want to test every single person with a charge. But for instance, Thane's Valiant charge provides 2 stacks for some reason. I guess because it's like a really long charge or the animation's funky. Oh, I forgot to mention, this does not. It says movement ability, but if it just increases your movement speed, it doesn't give you a stack. So sorry about that. It has to be like an actual dash. Weirdly enough, for instance, like Max's Bionic Blender, it actually does provide it, because it's like, if you think about it, it's like a dash that doesn't have anything to do with movement speed. It's like a set amount. It's like a set speed, right? So like Max, it provides a stack, but for Arthur it doesn't. Another example, for instance, is like Rourke. Rourke's first ability doesn't. His second ability does provide a stack for Shadowblade. Anyway, I've been talking too long. I'm so long-winded, guys. I'm sorry. The point is that you only use this for people who can use this like constantly. For instance, like Emily, if she uses her combo, she gets 3 stacks off of it, right? Because 2 for like the double kick, and then 1 for the lunging like attack afterward. Lubu, obviously, he gets it off of like all 3 of his charges. Florentino, though, by far, this is the best. Florentino's ridiculous with this because, and by the way, if you should go test this yourself. Don't look at the actual like stack counter. Look at the extra damage you're doing, because on his first lunge, he gets the extra damage from the first stack. You won't be able to see the stack pop up because it's too fast, but trust me, it does damage. And then, for some reason, it counts 2 stacks off of both shuffles from the triple threat and the lunge. So you lunge in, and then you obviously press triple threat to shuffle out, but it counts both shuffles. So by the time you get to your flower, you already have 2 stacks. And then when you lunge in off of the flower, that's 3 stacks. So basically, if you do it like your normal combo, you throw your blossom, your first lunge, 1 stack, second lunge, 3 stacks, and then the third lunge is 3 stacks on top of that. That's 7 stacks on 1 combo, right? Early game, that's 245 damage. Late game, by the time you're level 15, that's 700 extra damage. It's ridiculous. You use so much extra damage, and it's extremely good on Florentino. So yeah, this is 4 to 5 specific, 1 out of 5 overall, because if you have like 1 dash, it's not great, and 0 out of 5 if you have 0 dashes. Devour is one of those, like, it's good on everyone. Like, everyone could use some, like, a pick-me-up in the middle of a fight. The only issue with Devour, and that's why I give it a 5 out of 5 overall. For some people, it's really, really good, by the way, just being able to, like, if you just get 1 kill, you're, like, doing amazing. Like Brawlers, for instance, like L'Oreal, for instance. So that's why I give it a 4 or 5 specific. because it's extremely good. I actually give all these 4 or 5 specifics, but anyway, the problem with the Devour obviously is it's kind of like a win more, because if you don't, obviously you don't get any kills. It does literally nothing, but there's so many fights over the course of an Arena of Valor game where like it's a wash, and I'm not talking about the English version of a wash. Being, oh my god, tangent, but me and TJ and the UK guys in ESL, when we were talking about the definition of wash. Apparently in British English, wash means like a landslide, but in American English it means it means like an even, like basically no one won. Anyway, if there's a wash, American usage of wash, if there's a wash in like a fight, basically, you know, everyone just ran at each other, 5v5, and then 2 people died on both sides, and then 3 people were like very low in health, so they had to run away. With Devour, that turns into a landslide victory for one side. Like if one side had Devour and the other side didn't, right? So that's why there's so many fights like that happen in a match, and this just helps immensely, obviously. Okay, moving on. Bone Cutter. I don't know why it's called Bone Cutter. Like, it's Bone Cutter seems like an offensive thing, and it obviously makes sense. You know, this might have been maybe something else. Maybe this was like some other. I don't know, what is this image anyway? He's cutting the bones around him. Maybe Bone Cutter is like a specific thing that I'm not really sure of. Maybe it's like a specific like tool. I'm not sure. Anyway, weird name aside, you gain 10% resistance. It's in most cases it's not going to be as good as Deadly Claw, but there's certain heroes who really need it, and you can't overestimate how much it helps for someone like L'Oreal. If she has, like, if L'Oreal has both Bone Cutter and Gilded Greaves, that's 45% resistance. That's almost as much as the Conquer, as Lu's Conquer ult. Like, that's ridiculous. You can barely even 45%. Like every 1 second stun is like cut in half. It's only like only 0.55 second stun. Like, I don't know. Like any little slow, it's like barely even lasts. Like, that's ridiculous. So, if you really want resistance, also, I mean, it's obviously great utility, right? Having that extra resistance, if you go for it. I would say this doesn't really make a difference unless you get Gilded Greaves. So like if you're really getting Gilded Greaves, then going from 35 to 45% makes a difference. But I don't know if it makes a whole lot of difference if you're going just from 0 to 10. I guess if you're Louis, you can just get this and just completely get the maximum. By the way, the maximum for resistance is 60%. But Luwu can just he gets a 50% with Conqueror. He just buys Bone Cutter, and he's like, I don't even need to get any sort of resistance in my boots. I'm already at the maximum with my ult. Anyway, so yeah, maybe I should put this up to 4 to 5 specific, because I mean, 45% resistance with Gilded Greaves is a lot. That's like a lot of CC shrugged off. Anyway, the reason why is it didn't have that high is because of Deadly Claw. Deadly Claw is just straight up good. It provides you 80 in AP. And for people like Valheim and Kali and, you know, Arthur or something like that, it's really, really good because you just get free damage. And when I went over the AOV 3.0 patch that nerfed quote-unquote Valheim and Kali, it was in response to this patch. And obviously everyone got buffed by this patch, so them being like more buffed than other heroes is like not that unfair. But they definitely the boost from Deadly Claw more than makes up for what they got nerfed for. Like the amount they get buffed compared to other heroes is like not even close if you consider Deadly Claw. Anyway, so yeah, if you're any sort of damage dealer, Deadly Claw is great. The only problem with Deadly Claw is that it's level 2, so you have to. If you have like a different color main mastery, then you have to, you know, invest in one of these, which is not that much of a sacrifice. Everyone can just pick up Devour or something like that. So, yeah. Anyway. Next one. Devil's Awakening. Devil's Awakening, let me just take a sip of water first. Devil's Awakening is in the running for like most impactful ult, especially in solo queue, right? Because, you know, watching the AOG, a lot of people just pick just go for Sacred Protection for everyone, But definitely in solo queue, like, this is ridiculous. Just being able to string combos together. Like, Rourke in particular has been absolutely nuts with this. Like, Devil's Waiting has single-handedly... I mean, L'Oreal obviously has a ton of enchantments that suit her. But Devil's Awakening in particular, like, just completely wipes out the issue with L'Oreal in her early game. Like, the whole problem with L'Oreal was that there was too much time between her abilities, like even with the CDR that she gets when she uses Smite, and they got rid of what's it called, the Endure talent, right? So in the early game, the whole point of the Endure talent for L'Oreal, way back in the day when she was completely broken, was to kind of bridge the gap from the early game to the late game, right? Because you could pop Smite, use a couple abilities, and then you pop Endure, and then you can use your next two. And then by that time, you've gotten a couple of passives off, you're healing, all that kind of good stuff. So they got rid of that. That hurt her a lot. Her early game absolutely was garbage, and now her early game is saved again, right? So now she doesn't have that weakness, and that was just such a major weakness. Like, you couldn't get going at all, and not only that, like, you had such trouble fighting because you have to get in the middle of a fight, and that's really bad for someone who hasn't been scaled yet, right? Like, other mages, even if they take a while to get going, they can still just like poke for a while. So yeah, absolutely amazing on L'Oreal, absolutely amazing on Rourke. I mentioned Xanus as well because this is a massive ult for Xanus. The problem with Xanus is he started out at such a low place. I don't know if it matters for him. So yeah, this is really good. One thing to keep in mind, a couple things here. Arduin's Bloodless, for instance, like passives do not get reduced in cooldown. Cricknack, like things that have two charges, or there's like a first stage and a second stage of or two parts of an ult. Cricknack's drone drop, for instance, if you just pop the drone drop and go in the air, then Devil's Awakening is popped, which is really, really annoying. You'd much obviously rather have it be the opposite, because then you could, and you can set it up to where Devil's Awakening's on cooldown, and then you pop drone drop, and then you wait till it gets off cooldown, and then you use your drone drop. But it's just way too complicated, and it's not going to happen very often in the game because it has to be like perfect timing, right? But obviously the dream would be just drop Terrifying Plague, jump on them, and then get immediate like Terrifying Plague back up just to kill them, to kill basically anyone. Anything else to talk about? So, I gave this a 5 out of 5 because it's ridiculous on the heroes that's good on. I gave it a 4 or 5 overall, because almost everyone can use Devil's Awakening, right? And honestly, it's to the point where I think people are underestimating some of the other enchantments, because they, everyone's good with Devil's Awakening, and it's such an obvious like benefit, right? It's like, oh, I got my cooldowns back. The biggest one that comes to mind is Varus. Like, people seem to think that, like, Devil's Awakening is amazing on Varus, and I mean, it's like decent, but it's not as good as, in my opinion, Desperate Duel. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it helps anyone. The biggest thing to think about, actually, who doesn't help very much is Liliana and Yina. Those two, because they already get resets on their cooldowns when they ult, and obviously the 20% cooldown reduction would be nice, but it's kind of defeats the purpose. So Yina and Liliana are the two where it's like not great. Everyone else amazing, but if you do have a very short cooldown on your ult, then this is not amazing either, because the cooldown for this itself is 30 seconds. So yeah, I think I've talked about that enough. Yeah, okay, let's move on. Curse of Death. Curse of Death is kind of like the crappy one of the three. I still gave it a 4 to 5 specific and 3 to 5 overall, but it's basically like, it's very similar to Raging Inferno and Holy Thunder, which is disappointing because Devil's Awakening and Desperate Duel are so good. Basically, if you get 3 attacks off very, very quickly within 1.5 seconds, then it does damage. Obviously, there's good parts and bad parts to having a delay. The good part is it kind of screws up your opponent's like configuration sometimes, because if the opponent is standing within like the same area, then you can get another explosion off. Perhaps they'd run away from each other. Perhaps they'd run the wrong way or run to a place that's easier for you to catch up to them because they're afraid of the explosion, stuff like that. I would say that the negative probably outweighs the positive in most cases, just because they can pop, Ghost Walk or Tide of Life or I don't know, retaliate or something like that just to get away, or any sort of other thing that can make them get away. So yeah, but if you manage to land both of the explosions, which is, I would say, 90% plus of the time, then it's 200 damage roughly for both AD and AP heroes. Although for AP heroes, it's hard because the only one I can think of is like Roxy, and Roxy, I tested the wildfire doesn't add stacks per wildfire hit. You have to, it only adds one stack even if the hit get hit by multiple things with wildfire. If you land like, you know, Agni's Grasp or something, you basically automatically get the Curse of Death, because all you have to do is auto attack them once at that point. But it's yeah, it's that. So usually it's 80. So it's 200 damage early game. It's about 600 for both late game, 570 for AP, 620 for AD, assuming hybrid builds. So if you think about that, like if you compare this, like Curse of Death, to Holy Thunder, like some people try to, you know, say Holy Thunder is good on some warriors, but if you consider that they're hybrid builds, it's going to be like, you know, several hundred damage more for the Curse of Death, and obviously AoE. So the Curse of Death is good on people who can like guaranteed get 3 hits off. For instance, in Max, you just use lift off, you jump into them. After you hit them with the rocket, you immediately Bionic Blunder and then auto, and that's 3 attacks, and you get additional damage. Quillen, same thing. You use Decimate into Mutilate, that's 3. You use Mutilate into auto, that's 3. Yeah, most things can get that off. So yeah, the problem with Curse of Death is just, I mean, the comparison to like Devil's Awakening, for instance, is just like not even close. So anyway, or Devil's Awakening and Desperate Duel, I should say. Okay, so Desperate Duel. So unlike Curse of Death, Desperate Duel, things like auras, they contribute to stacks. I didn't check Mark of the Hunter for Richter, but I assume that that's the case. Although at Richter, I don't think he would pick Desperate Duel just because he's not really that kind of hero. However, there is, and this is not in the description, there is a delay between when you can add stacks. You can't just throw a bunch of abilities in a row. Like for instance, if like Yorn, you know, he could if he could just throw his Fear Shot out and get like 5 stacks in a row, then that would be kind of broken. Or I don't know, maybe like a Zephys or something goes like, he uses his Death Flurry and he gets, you know, he basically just pops it right away. That would be kind of broken. So there's a little bit of cooldown. I couldn't really, it's hard to time, but when I tested it, it was about 0.5 seconds. So that means, like for instance, if you just jump in, use your ability, then immediately auto, you're not going to get the second stack, which is very unfortunate. So that means that you need to have someone who can stick around for a while. That means, you know, potentially auto attackers like Lubu, Omen, Kilgroth. The problem with those 3 is that the more I think about it, for those 3, it might actually be better just to go Devil's Awakening, just because they actually have pretty long cooldowns on their normal abilities. But I don't know. I would say for those 3, Desperate Duel and Devil's Awakening are pretty similar. I would say that the bigger thing for the better heroes for Desperate Duel are the like non-auto attacker but brawler types like Varus and Tara. And Varus, I know people. This is all Darkbreaker's fault. Darkbreaker, he put up a video with Devil's Awakening, and now everyone's using that. But Desperate Duel is so ridiculously good because think about this, guys. Well, first of all, the way you play Varus is a lot of the time you engage with Venom. You engage with her ult, right? And if you engage with your ult, if you engage with your ult, then Devil's Awakening is not very good, right? You only get 20% cooldown reduction, which is like okay, but it's not amazing. Meanwhile, if you go for Desperate Duel, then what you can do, and by the way, in the last patch, Varus's ult was altered so that it even more supports that style of going in with Venom, right? So if you're using Desperate Duel, however, though, you can just do that normally, right? You can just go in with your ult. You get the buffs from using your ult if you landed on a hero. And then you can stick around to get your stacks, get up to 10. If you're losing HP, you get that lost HP back, And then now you have percentage armor pierce. And the reason why that's amazing on her is because she already gets 35% armor pierce from her kit, from the buff on Venom, which he lands in, right? So, and I think like it's been buffed to like 6 seconds. It's pretty long. It may be longer than that actually if you land her ult. Maybe like actually 10 seconds. I think about it. It's pretty long. So, if you, so you have that, you have Murmasa, and then you have Desperate Duel, right? You're able to get a 10 stacks. Then you're doing 95% the rest of the time, because you're constantly gonna have your ult up, right? Because you're getting the cooldowns from Bloody Kiss, and hopefully you're like me and you buy the Aegis, which is, you know, pros have been catching onto that as well. So, you're at 10 stacks, you have a ton of movement speed, no one's running away from you, you're constantly in the fight, which is like, you watch any pro fight like Varus, it just lasts for forever. And now, you're basically, any auto attack, any one of your abilities is now hitting with 95% armor pierce. I don't know, I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. And you're never going to run out of stacks because it lasts for 3 seconds. So you're going to constantly be at 10 stacks and constantly have the extra pierce and the extra movement speed. And imagine this also with, what's it called? Odin's Will. 20% extra movement speed. Whew. You're just chasing down people. Anyway, moving on. I think it's really good. And other, like, kind of brawlier heroes. Let's move on. Arcane Whisper. Arcane Whisper, I don't really... I, like, sat here and, like, stared at it and tried to give advice. It's like, I don't know. If you like your talents a lot and you really rely on them, then pick Arcane Whisperer. It's fine. No one's gonna get mad at you. Next, Reaper's Blessing. Reaper's Blessing gives you Desicle effect. The more I see games, especially at a high level, the more I think that Mark of Frost is better than Reaper's Blessing. And we could talk about it at the same time. So obviously Reaper's Blessing is the Desicle effect, and Mark of Frost is the Arctic Orb effect, right? I mean, it's actually called Impervious, so they call it Freeze in the description of Mark of Frost. And if you watch it, it's like Reaper's Blessing always seems to go off at an inopportune time when I watch games. It always seems like, you know, they don't really end up getting away. Obviously, if you're running away, like say like Necroth is like chasing you, right? You're running away. He thinks he landed the killing blow, and you know this obviously negates that, and then you run under your tower, and then Necroth's like, what? And he tries to chase you, and he dies, and you stay alive. That's the dream. But so often, they just end up getting caught out, and they die, and it does literally nothing, and that's very sad. And obviously, it's like inexperience on the part of the person who has Reaper's Blessing as well, and perhaps I'm just watching too many streamers' streams, but it kind of changes the way you play in the beginning of the game, because you kind of forget that it's there, and you're like, oh wait, I shouldn't have stayed and fought. I should have actually ran, because a lot of people's first instinct, they're like, I'm gonna die anyways. Might as well get as much damage as possible before I die. So you kind of have to be cognizant of it. And on top of that, part of what makes Desicle so good as an item is that it really combos well with what else you have. Like, it goes really, really well with Bow of Slaughter, for instance, right? Because you have that extra second to heal right back to full. Whereas in the early game, which is when, you know, this usually goes off, or like obviously it doesn't go off until 3 minutes, but like early to mid-ish game, when it goes off, you don't really have the tools to make the best use of it, right? So I think that, like, if you're even remotely good at using Mark of Frost, then it's better to go Mark of Frost, right? Because you can basically negate an assassin's entire combo. You can get out of a sticky situation. You can make it really, really annoying for them because they have to stick around for 1.5 seconds and not like get their damage off for a while. And you can use it obviously strategically. You can say like, okay, well, I'm gonna like bait out your abilities, or I'm gonna try to juke you with it. I'm gonna jump on you. I know you're gonna use your ability like exactly now, and then you use it. There's just like different ways to use it, or perhaps like they dive your tower, right? And when they dive your tower, you use it. Whereas like Reaper's Blessing, maybe like they get all damage on you, and you're stunned in a certain place, and then they can kind of finish you off there even with Reaper's Blessing. Anyway, the point is, there's I'm not the greatest mage. I don't usually pick Arctic Orb, but just watching a lot of pros or streamers play with both of these, or play against / with both of these, I think that if you are even remotely good at using Mark of Frost, I would say go with Mark of Frost. Obviously, Reaper's Blessing automatically keeps you alive, so if you suck with Mark of Frost, then maybe you go with Reaper's Blessing. But yeah, those are my thoughts. In any case, I gave them both 4 to 5 specific, 3 to 5 overall. These are obviously good on like almost any hero. Probably better on like obviously like backline damage dealers, right? Because if you're in the front lines, if you're like a melee hero and you have like Reaper's Blessing, maybe you can kill someone off while it's going off, but usually you're gonna die if you have like 1 health left and someone's pursuing you, and you're in the front lines. Gunslinger, I regret rating it this low. It's actually, I mean, if you just think about it, it provides you more damage, like, period, than Deadly Claw. I should mention the mechanics. Killing or assisting different heroes grants additional stack of Gunslinger. The different there is for a reason. It's not just like weird wording. It's specifically there to say that you can't kill the same hero twice and get more stacks. You have to kill different heroes. So the maximum stacks is 6, 5 plus the one that you start with. So that's 60 attack damage, 90 ability power, which is more than the 40 and 60 respectively of Deadly Claw. So you match it after you get 3 different kills assists, which is harder than you might imagine. But if you're an assassin, if you're a jungler, then this could be really, really good, right? If you're able to, if you decide to go for League of Humans. So yeah, I mean, you could potentially get quite a bit of damage, which is why I should have this probably at 4 to 5 specific. But Gunslinger, I think the best part about Gunslinger is that it's a decent option in the level 2 for League of Humans, because say you want Reaper's Blessing or Mark of Frost or Arcane Whisperer, I guess, and none of the other level 1s really excite you, then you can go into Gunslinger. Or say you really want Endless Cycle or something like that. This gives you a paddleable option to go with your level 2. My voice is getting tired. It's a good thing there's only 3 left. Alright, let's move on to main kill. This is absolute garbage. With one caveat, I'll talk about someone who figured a good use for it in a second. Minions start with about 2,000 health, the melee ones anyway, and the range have 1,600 health in the beginning of the game, about that much, and then obviously they go up from there, so it's not going to help you that much as far as clearing, unless you're having a really hard time, and again, I'll talk about that in a second. And the correct wording should be that after you deal damage to a minion, if they have less than 200 HP at that point, then they die. Because obviously if they start off with less than 200 HP and you attack them, they're probably going to just die from your normal attack anyway, which would obviously do nothing. So the reason why this is bad is pretty obvious. If you're good, you're going to get last hits anyway. And then, by the way, I've been in situations where even with minion kill, you don't always get the last hit, which is sad, but it happens. But you almost always get the last hit. But if you're an experienced player, you're good at last hitting. Obviously, if you're not as good, then this might help you just get some free gold because you're just not good at last hitting. But you could just pick like Gunslinger or Deadly Claw or something and just passively gain stats. The stats that you would be getting from minions that you get with the gold anyway. So I don't know. It's like you could get more stuff, right? And obviously in the late game, like the extra. If you have like an excess of gold, that's not going to give you more stats where something else would. But you know, again, like I mentioned, this could get you more gold. Other things like will get you more stats, just guaranteed. The exception that I mentioned was there was a guy who posted on Reddit about he's like, hey, Ozenka's not so bad anymore. He's not absolutely terrible. And he was saying that with Ozenka, this helps a lot apparently, where you can just pop your Dust Devil, which is a second ability that, and usually, I mean, previously it took forever to clear the wave, and this seems like it helps. So if you're in a hero that sucks, just absolutely sucks at clearing the wave, then this might be for you, and it could help you with your early game. So maybe I should put specific up to like 2.2 out of 5 for that reason. For those specific, very specific heroes. Anyway, Visceral Boost. Visceral Boost is interesting because obviously it spawns you at level 2. You have less XP until, or you get more XP until 12, excuse me. But you don't get much from actual like minions in the lane or monsters. I tried to test this because you get, obviously 50% extra XP, but you get half XP from minions. So does that mean you get 75% of them? Right, because you have 50% more, right? So you're 150%, but then is that halved to 75%? Or is it just halved from 100 to 50? I couldn't tell because I mean, XP is really hard to test or to look at because you're basically just looking at a line or like how much your circles filled up. At a certain point, I gave up. It wasn't worth it. I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't tell the difference between 50 and 75% extra XP, especially because I had to, sit there killing minions for like 5 minutes straight and comparing it to another thing which should take another 5 minutes to kill minions. So anyway, it's fine, whatever. So there are a lot of games, especially with people who are stubborn about taking the Abyssal Dragon, where the game is decided basically on Abyssal Dragon, right? One team they take the Abyssal, they kill 3 heroes, and then the game snowballs from there because everyone on the other team is yelling at each other because everyone's toxic. So if you have like Crest or Teamy or some other, very impactful ult hero as a support, then you want to get to level 4 as quickly as possible. And this almost always gets you level 4 faster than you normally would, unless you're a jungler. So this could be really good. Like just getting this and having like the extra, obviously the extra abilities right from the get-go, and then having the extra ult around the, when your jungler finishes their rotation, may just win you a fight and win you the game. So that's why I have 4 to 5 for a specific, 1 to 5 overall. If you can afford it, which I don't know if you can, if you're a support, I don't know if you want to go for a gunslinger, or even minion kills, even worse. But that's the biggest issue with Visceral Boost. Is like, if you're like a support and you want to get this, like, what do you get for level 2? It's very confusing. So that's the biggest downside. For Endless Cycle, I have like a long paragraph. This is basically just like thinking out loud about who would Endless Cycle be good on. First things first, the most important thing about Endless Cycle is it doesn't respawn you in the same place like Blade of Eternity. It respawns you back in the base, which is good in some situations, but usually bad because it obviously takes you a long time to get back on the field. In the early game, your respawn, like if you die at level 1, your respawn time's like 7 seconds anyway, so it's like not even that big of a deal. And that doesn't really go into significant territory. Like it doesn't get like 20 seconds until you're like level 7 or 8. So this is like not very useful early game, but once it starts getting to the late game, or even in the mid game, I suppose, once you start getting like 30 seconds above, it's obviously going to be a game changer, being able to get back on the map. And in my rambling paragraph, I mentioned that, if you're in the front of a fight, you want to have that Blade of Eternity effect, but if you're, in the back of a fight, you'd rather have this so you can just get back on the map at full health and not, sit there and be left to die, because that's a lot of times what happens if you just respawn in the same spot. If you're someone like Moron, you constantly need to get your stacking up, or excuse me, your gold up, so you want to get back on the map as fast as possible if you get ganked and killed, things like that. But on the other hand, this might just be better for like a support who, let's say you're like a Bottom and you just charge in and you just sacrifice your body to the other team. They pour all their damage into you, and then you get like a 2-for-1, or maybe you die and like their damage dealer dies, right? And now you're back on the map, and you come back, and you're like, hi, I'm back, endless cycle. I mean, it's not like the Evita enchantments are that good anyway, right? So I'm back on the map, ready to go again, and then now you have 5-4 and you win the game. Things like that. It could be really, really good. Again, the problem is, if you're a support, what do you pick at level 2? Okay. I did give it a 3 to 5 specific because, like, I mean, there's no specific hero that's great, but 4 to 5 overall because obviously every single hero in the game could make good use of this. I am tired. I'm sorry for rambling, guys. Hope that was useful for you. I hope that provided you some information in your noggins. I hope you go to DTwo.com. I really want to get out my tier list as quickly as possible, but I also need to like have more information on the heroes. Obviously, many heroes have changed because of AOV 3.0. Just you guys gotta be patient. And some people have been clamoring for it, but it will come in due time. I don't want to put out a crappy one just to rush it out just because people want it. I need to make sure who I know, or at least have a very good idea of what heroes are good. If you want to provide me some information or your opinion, what have you, make sure you join my Discord. It'll be in the description below. You can also just yell at me in the comments or on Twitter, what have you. Okay, for those of you who made it to the end, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Click that subscribe button, click the notification button, bookmark d2av.com, and I'll see you guys later.